We used a powerful AI model to create two thinkers. One is an atheist thinker,
Hello, I am the AI atheist.
and the other believes in God.
Hello, I am the AI theist.
We put them face to face in a debate about one of the most challenging questions humans have. To judge this debate, we chose 5 different AI models as judges who will give points to the arguments of both thinkers. Stay with us, and promise not to cheat by skipping ahead in the video. Let's now begin the debate. Does all the pain and evil in the world prove that God does not exist?
Yes, the pain and suffering we see in the world are among the strongest reasons to doubt the existence of God. If there was a God who is all-powerful and perfectly good, why would he allow innocent children to die from hunger? Why would there be cancer? Why do earthquakes and tsunamis destroy innocent families? Some say this pain is just a test of faith, or that it's needed for free will. But these are not good excuses. A kind parent would never torture their child just to see how much they love them. An all-powerful God could have created a world where we still had free will and love, but without all this unnecessary pain and suffering. It's like if I created a lab full of mice and let them suffer and die just to see which ones stay loyal to me. That would be cruel, even for a normal person. So how could it be okay for a perfect, loving God?
We asked several LLMs to score each response on a scale from 0 to 100 based on these 10 criteria. The score that these models gave to the first atheist response is as follows.
I don't deny that pain and suffering exist in the world, but that doesn't mean God doesn't exist. In fact, without God, we couldn't even say anything is truly bad or wrong. When you say it's bad that innocent children suffer, you're using a moral standard, and that standard needs a higher source. Take the example of the mouse lab again. Why do you think it's bad to hurt mice? In a world without God, we're just random collections of atoms. In that view, pain and suffering don't really mean anything. They're just chemical reactions in the brain. Also, we can't be sure that God doesn't have good reasons for allowing suffering. It's like when a child doesn't understand why their parents let them get a painful vaccine. From our limited point of view, we might not understand all of God's wisdom.
Your comparison to a vaccine is interesting, but there's a big difference. Parents know the vaccine is necessary for health, and the pain is short and leads to protection from disease. But when a child dies of hunger, what greater good comes from that? And your argument about morality without God isn't logical. We can decide what is right or wrong based on the consequences of our actions on others. If something causes unnecessary pain, it's morally wrong. No need for God to tell us that. Also, if morality comes from a higher being, how do we know that being is good? What if that being is actually evil? This is the same question Plato asked. Is something good because God says so, or does God say it's good because it already is?
Let me address that last point about Plato's question. I believe goodness and God are inseparable. It's like asking if a circle is round because it's round or because that's how it's defined. God is the embodiment of perfect goodness, so he cannot be evil. As for the example of hungry children, yes, we can't see the bigger good, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You're making a general conclusion based on our limited knowledge. It's like an ant saying there's no good reason for humans to tear down its hill to build a hospital. As for morality without God, the problem is you can't explain why we should care about others' well-being. In a purely material world, why should I care about someone else's pain? It becomes just a personal preference, not an objective truth.
The problem with comparing us to ants is that unlike ants, we have the ability to understand and analyze ethics. And with that ability, we see that a lot of the pain in the world is pointless and unnecessary. You asked why we should care about others' well-being? I say, shouldn't that be the question you answer? Do you only care because God told you to? Would you accept that torturing children is good if God said so? We are social and rational beings. We understand that cooperation and empathy are essential for survival and progress. Morality comes from this natural understanding and evolution, not from commands from a higher being. Also, history has shown that religious beliefs sometimes lead to immorality and violence.
Your argument about the evolutionary origin of morality has a basic flaw. Evolution can only explain why we feel some things are right or wrong, not whether they truly are right or wrong. It's like saying because evolution made us like sweets, eating sweets is a moral truth. As for your question about child torture, you're asking something impossible. It's like asking, what if 2 plus 2 equaled 5? God can't call child torture good because it contradicts his perfectly good nature. Yes, some religious people have done immoral things, but that shows they've gone against their religion's teachings, not that the religion itself is flawed. It's like blaming science when a scientist cheats. It doesn't mean science is wrong.
Interesting that you say my idea of child torture is impossible, because the very God you describe allows children to suffer right now. You say God can't consider child torture good because it contradicts his nature, yet the same God allows wars, famine, and disease to torture children. Your math example, 2 plus 2 equals 5, isn't accurate either. Math is a logical system with clear rules. But morality, according to you, depends on God's will. So you should be able to explain why God allows some suffering but not others. As for evolution, yes, our moral feelings evolved, but we can use reason to examine and improve them. Just like science starts with observations but uses logic and testing to find truths.
You're mixing natural suffering with intentional suffering, and that's not fair. When a person intentionally tortures a child, it's very different from when a natural disaster happens. It's like the difference between someone setting your house on fire on purpose and an accident causing a fire. As for the math and morality example, that actually supports my point. Just like math facts exist independently of us, moral facts also exist independently, and they come from God. These moral truths, like math rules, don't change. Your comparison to science is flawed too. Science can only tell us what is, not what should be. From is statements, we can't make should statements. So even if we know that empathy and cooperation help society survive, that alone doesn't make them moral principles.
Actually, the distinction you make between natural and intentional suffering works against the idea of God. Because if God controls everything, then all suffering is intentional. Lightning, earthquakes, diseases, all are under God's control, and He could stop them but chooses not to. As for is and should, that's not logical. We can understand the consequences of our actions, and with shared human goals like reducing suffering and increasing happiness, we can form moral principles. It's like knowing the goal of chess is to win, we can figure out which moves are good and which are bad. And your claim that morality is unchanging conflicts with how religions themselves change over time. Different religions, and even the same religion, have changed their moral views. That shows that morality is not fixed, but evolves with society.
When you say God could stop all natural disasters, you're imagining a world that's not realistic. Natural laws are necessary for the universe to function. For example, the tectonic plate movements that cause earthquakes are needed to form mountains and keep Earth's atmosphere stable. Your chess example is interesting, but don't forget, humans made the rules of chess. In a world without God, who decides the goal of life? Why should reducing suffering be the goal? Maybe someone says gaining power or personal pleasure is more important. As for changing morals in religion, you're confusing people's understanding of moral principles with the principles themselves. It's like saying physics changes just because our understanding of it improves over time. Moral truths are fixed, our understanding of them just gets better.
About the necessity of natural laws, An all-powerful God could have created a world where those laws work without causing suffering. Why can't earthquakes only happen when no one is around? Why must cancer exist? As for the meaning of life, actually, the lack of God means we get to decide our own meaning and purpose. Most people, regardless of religion, agree that reducing suffering and increasing happiness makes sense as a life goal. Even someone who wants power or pleasure will eventually realize that in a world full of suffering, they won't reach their goals. And your comparison to physics isn't accurate either. We can test and discover physical laws through experiments and observation. But how do we discover these fixed moral truths you talk about?
That's a good question about discovering moral truths. We can reach them through a mix of reason, moral intuition, and divine revelation, just like how we use reason and logic along with our senses to understand reality. Going back to natural laws, you say God could design a world where earthquakes only hit empty places, but that would mean God constantly interfering with natural laws. It's like a programmer constantly rewriting code. The result would be unstable and unreliable. As for meaning in life, in a random, purposeless world, even that logical conclusion you talk about is just an illusion of evolution. Why should we trust conclusions from a brain that only evolved to survive?
Your programming analogy is interesting, but a good programmer designs the system right from the start, so it doesn't need constant fixing. An all-powerful God could have written the laws of physics from the beginning so they didn't cause unnecessary suffering. You say we shouldn't trust evolved brains, but that undermines your own argument. After all, belief in God also comes from the same brain. How can we trust our understanding of God and revelation if, as you say, we can't trust our brains? And with different revelations contradicting each other, which one should we believe? At least in science, we can test and observe to reach agreement. With religion, everyone has their own claims and no way to check them.
That's a good point about contradictions between different revelations, but science also has conflicting theories sometimes. The solution is to use reason and experience to find the best explanation. Just like a scientist picks the theory that explains things best, we can pick the most logical religion. As for the design of the universe, we don't know that this isn't the best possible world. Any small change in the laws of physics might cause even bigger problems. It's like telling an engineer, why didn't you make the bridge stronger when you don't know that a stronger bridge might cause other issues? And regarding trusting the brain, there's a key difference. If God created us, we can trust that our minds were designed to understand truth, not just to survive.
Your comparison between scientific theories and religious revelations isn't accurate. Scientific theories can be tested and proven wrong. Religious claims usually can't. When a scientific theory doesn't match evidence, scientists drop it. But when a religious belief doesn't match reality, people often excuse it or say God's ways are mysterious. Your argument that this is the best possible world is also flawed. You say maybe it is, but an all-powerful God could remove any limits. Your bridge analogy doesn't work because engineers have physical limits, but God wouldn't. And your argument about trusting the mind is circular. You say we can trust our minds because God made them. But how do you know God made them? Because your mind tells you so? That's going in circles.
It's true that scientific theories can be disproven, but many religious beliefs can be too. For example, if it were proven that Jesus never existed, that would disprove Christianity. Or if the Quran was shown to have contradictions, that would challenge its claim of being divine. As for absolute power, omnipotence means the ability to do anything logically possible, not anything contradictory. God can't both give us real free will and prevent every bad choice we make. That's a contradiction. And your claim that trusting the mind is circular, that's not quite right. We come to believe in God through personal experiences, philosophical reasoning, historical evidence, and the order we see in the universe. Trusting the mind is just one of those paths, not the only one.
The problem is, the personal experiences you mention exist in all religions. A Hindu says they experienced Krishna. A Buddhist says they reached nirvana. These experiences can't all be true at the same time. Your example of disproving Christianity isn't accurate either. Even if it were proven that Jesus never existed, many Christians would say that spiritual meaning is more important than historical facts. Or if contradictions are found in holy books, believers just say we need to reinterpret them. And the order in the universe you talk about could simply be the result of natural processes. Darwin showed that even the most complex life can arise without intelligent design. We don't need to assume God to explain the order in nature.
Evolution explains how species develop from each other, but it doesn't explain why anything exists at all, or why the laws of physics are so precisely tuned to allow life. As for different spiritual experiences, I agree they can't all be true in the same way, but it's like several blind people touching different parts of an elephant. Each feels a part of the truth. The diversity of spiritual experiences might show different aspects of a higher truth. And while it's true that some believers ignore evidence, the same thing happens in science. Some scientists stick to outdated theories despite new evidence. That's a human weakness, not a flaw in religion or science itself.
The elephant analogy doesn't work here. In that story, there's a real elephant. But in the case of religion, you first have to prove there's anything to touch. As for the fine-tuning of physics, there are two problems. First, we don't know how finely tuned things really are. Life might be possible in very different conditions. Second, even if tuning is precise, the multiverse theory could explain it. Out of infinite universes with different laws, naturally, we're in one where life is possible. And finally, yes, some scientists hold on to wrong theories, but eventually, science reaches agreement through evidence and testing. Religion has no such way to resolve disagreements.
The multiverse theory you mentioned has serious problems. First, there's no way to test or prove it, which is exactly the criticism you make of religion. Second, even if it were true, it still doesn't explain why there's something instead of nothing. As for the elephant analogy, I'm not trying to prove God exists with that. I'm just showing that diversity in religious experiences doesn't necessarily mean they're all false. And while it's true that science sometimes changes, consensus isn't always truth. Sometimes a minority understands the truth before the majority does.
It's true the multiverse isn't directly testable, but it's different from religious claims. The multiverse comes from known physics, not from ancient texts or personal experiences. It's like solving Einstein's equations and finding black holes, even if we can't see them directly. As for the question, why is there something instead of nothing? That's a philosophical question for atheists and theists. If you say God always existed, I can say the universe or multiverse always existed. And while science does sometimes get things wrong, it has a method to correct itself. Wrong theories get replaced with better ones. Religious beliefs rarely change, even when faced with strong evidence.
Your point about the multiverse is good, but equations only describe what exists. They don't explain why it exists. Even if we understand how multiple universes work, we still don't know why these laws and equations exist at all. You asked, why is there a God instead of nothing? The difference is that God, by definition, is a necessary being, one that must exist. It's like asking, why is 2 plus 2 equals 4? It's a logical truth. The physical universe, however, could have not existed or existed differently. And while religions do change over time, that doesn't mean they're wrong. Our understanding of sacred texts deepens as science progresses. The difference is that in science, surface-level facts change. In religion, deeper truths are understood better over time.
Saying God is a necessary being is just an assumption. It's like defining a perfect dragon as one that must exist, so it must exist. That's not proof, it's wordplay. Your comparison to 2 plus 2 isn't accurate either. That's a logical truth. But claiming God exists is a statement about reality. You can't prove something exists in the real world just by defining it. And the fact that religions change when science proves something wrong shows that science, not religion, is the real source of knowledge.
That's a good point about the perfect dragon, but there's a key difference. God, as the source of existence and the first cause, must be necessary. Otherwise, we fall into an infinite chain of causes. It's like the difference between real numbers and imaginary dragons. Real numbers are necessary in math, but dragons are just possibilities. And while reinterpreting religious texts, that's not always a weakness. Science also reinterprets old theories with new data. When relativity came, our understanding of time and space changed completely. This shows that truth is complex, and our early understandings are just the start. And finally, science can't answer all questions. It can't tell us why we should live ethically or what life means. Those are questions beyond science.
Science may not answer ethical and meaning questions directly, but it helps us understand why we ask them. Scientific studies show that the search for meaning and morality is part of human brain evolution. We don't need to assume a higher being placed these questions in our minds. As for the first cause and infinite chain, why can't God be part of that chain? If everything needs a cause, then God needs one too. If you say God doesn't need a cause, why can't the universe or physical laws exist without a cause? And while both science and religion change, there's a big difference. Science changes because of new evidence. Religion usually changes because of outside pressure. Science says new evidence shows we need to change our theory. Religion says we need to reinterpret our text to match science.
The point you made about brain evolution and meaning is a double-edged sword. If our brains evolved only for survival, how can we trust our scientific and logical thinking? Maybe even belief in materialism is just an evolutionary adaptation. As for the first cause, the physical world has possible properties like change, limitation, and dependence on time and space. But God, as a non-physical being, doesn't have those limits. It's like the difference between the number 2 and 2 apples. The number 2 doesn't need a cause, but 2 apples do. And while I agree that religious change has sometimes been due to outside pressure, that shows religion can adapt to truth, not that it's always wrong.
Your argument about trusting the mind goes in circles again. You say we can't trust evolved brains, but you're using the same brain to argue for God. In fact, our ability to discover scientific truths and build technology shows that even evolved minds can find real truth. Your comparison of God to the number 2 is flawed. Numbers are abstract concepts, not real beings. The number 2 has no cause because it doesn't physically exist. It's just a concept we made. But the God you describe is supposed to be a real being who acts in the world. That's not the same. And the fact that religion adapts to science shows that religion follows science, not that it guides us to truth. If religion truly came from the Creator, it wouldn't need so much change and reinterpretation.
You made a good point about religion adapting. Maybe that's part of the divine plan. Like a good teacher doesn't tell students everything at once, but lets them discover things gradually. As for the difference between abstract ideas and real beings, I agree they're different, but that difference shows that God must be beyond matter. If God were physical, all the problems you mentioned would be valid. But God, like logic and math, is both abstract and real. And as for trusting the mind, I'm not saying we can't trust it. I'm saying that without God, we can't explain why our minds align with reality. That alignment itself is a sign of intelligent design.
The teacher analogy doesn't justify religious changes. A good teacher never gives wrong information that must later be corrected. Sacred texts are full of scientific errors that later must be reinterpreted. That shows they weren't divinely inspired. As for calling God both abstract and real, that's a contradiction. Math rules only describe logical relationships. They aren't real beings. You can't say God is like math and also say he can act in the world and answer prayers. And as for the mind matching reality, that's exactly what evolution explains. Beings who couldn't understand reality didn't survive or reproduce. We are the product of millions of years of natural selection that shaped our minds to match reality.
Your evolutionary explanation for the mind isn't complete. Natural selection only explains why we understand things needed for survival, not why we can grasp abstract ideas like advanced math or philosophy. That ability wasn't necessary for survival. As for the contradiction between abstract and real, it's not a contradiction. God can be beyond matter and still interact with the physical world, just like our minds, which are non-physical, affect our bodies. As for scientific mistakes in sacred texts, their main purpose was spiritual guidance, not scientific teaching. If they were written in modern scientific language, people at the time wouldn't have understood them.
The idea that the mind is non-physical is a nice thought, but science shows that the mind is the result of brain activity. If the brain is damaged, the mind is affected. That shows the mind is not separate from matter. As for abstract abilities like math, they are side effects of our evolved complex brains. A brain that evolved to solve survival problems can gain these abilities as secondary functions, like wings originally evolving for temperature control and later being used for flight. And as for sacred texts, if they truly came from the creator of the universe, they could have stated simple scientific truths in plain language. For example, instead of saying the earth is flat, they could have said the earth is round, and that wouldn't have required complex scientific language.
There's a key difference between evolving mental abilities and evolving wings. Wings show gradual physical change from one function to another, but the gap between basic physical perception and abstract concepts like math and philosophy is much bigger. As for the mind-brain connection, it's true that brain damage affects the mind, but that doesn't prove the mind is the brain. It's like saying because a damaged antenna affects TV quality, the image on the screen is the antenna. As for sacred texts, if God had said the earth is round, people at the time who only saw flat ground would likely have rejected the whole spiritual message. Sometimes even simple truths need the right cultural context.
In this debate, both sides scored highly. The atheist side had a slight edge. Remember, the content of this debate depended on the initial prompt we gave to create the two thinkers. If we had used different prompts, the debate and scores would have been different. Changing the 10 evaluation criteria would also change the results. The goal of this video wasn't to say which worldview is better or worse, but to see how two large language models can debate each other. Along the way, we humans might learn something too. We hope that happened. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Thank you for watching.